I had just finished unloading the last of the oxygenated barrels into the small pond on my land when I heard it. The unmistakable clatter of high heels stomping across gravel. I didn't even have to turn around. That voice could shatter glass. What is this aquatic nonsense? It was Karen, HOA President. Platinum bob, pastel pink blouse, clipboard surgically attached to her arm. These, I said calmly, pointing at the water, are tilapia. They're going into the pond I dug 6 months ago on my side of the property line. Karen gasped like I'd poured battery acid into the community pool. You can't bring fish into our neighborhood. This violates at least 7 HOA regulations. Are they invasive? Are they diseased? What if they migrate into our water? I blinked. Your water? Karen huffed. The HOA owns all shared water rights, including underground reserves. You can't just start stocking a private fishery next to our aquifer. Actually, I said, opening the folder Melissa had just brought out from the house, you might want to check this deed. This entire section, Plot B through D, including the groundwater access, was exempt from HOA acquisition in 1989. I bought it all 6 years ago. She yanked the paper from my hands like a toddler grabbing candy. Her eyes widened. For once, Karen had nothing to say, so naturally, she called the cops. 15 minutes later, 2 patrol cars rolled up. Blue and red lights reflected off the still pond water as the officers stepped out. They looked tired. One of them already had his hand on the bridge of his nose, sighing like this wasn't his first Karen rodeo. Karen pointed dramatically at the pond. Arrest him for ecological terrorism. He's dumping foreign fish into our water. This could impact our sprinkler systems and property values. The officer looked at me. I handed him the deed. He looked it over, then looked back at Karen. Ma'am, this pond is on his land, and so is the water. There's no violation here. Karen turned crimson. Then I want to file a formal HOA violation, officer. Ma'am, he said, that's not something we handle. Maybe talk to your HOA board. Karen growled. I am the HOA board. The officers left, shaking their heads. Karen stormed off with her phone out, muttering something about escalating this. Melissa nudged me. You told her about the well yet? I smiled. Not yet. She's going to love that surprise. Because what Karen didn't know was this, the HOA's water supply literally ran through my land, and I controlled the valve. The next morning, Karen showed up again, this time with backup. 2 other board members followed her like ducklings, both carrying clipboards and scanning my land like they were about to audit NASA. One of them, a weaselly guy named Frank, had once threatened to fine me for painting my barn too rustic. Karen strutted toward the pond like she owned it. We're here to perform an environmental assessment, she barked. HOA Code Section 4B7 grants us authority to inspect suspicious water modifications. I raised an eyebrow. You mean a pond? Frank clicked his pen. You're diverting water. This may constitute illegal usage of HOA shared groundwater. If you're impacting supply or pressure, it's a civil infraction. Melissa came outside, sipping coffee like it was a movie. Tell them, honey. I turned and pointed at the small metal hatch near the edge of our property. You see that? I said. That's the central access to the HOA's main water line. It runs from a spring that's entirely on my property. That valve controls the flow into your community's reservoir. Frank blinked. Wait, what? Karen's face twitched. You're lying. I walked over, flipped open the hatch, and turned the industrial valve a 1/4 inch. Within minutes, the sprinkler systems in the HOA community across the field began to sputter and stop. Melissa chuckled. Oops. Must be a water pressure issue. Karen's jaw dropped. You can't. That's illegal. I handed her the deed again, already bookmarked. Not only is it legal, Karen, but the HOA signed a 20-year usage agreement with the previous owner of this land. That agreement expired last spring. Nobody renewed it. I've simply been generous until now. Frank looked pale. So, the entire HOA's water is at your mercy? Not mercy, I smiled. Just logic. You want to threaten me over a pond full of tilapia? Fine, but I suggest the HOA board starts treating me like a neighbor instead of a criminal. Karen took a deep breath and hissed, "This is blackmail." "It's property rights," I said calmly. "You've been using water that doesn't belong to you. No one's charging you yet." She spun on her heels and left with her little brigade, barking into her phone. That night, I got an email from the HOA's attorney requesting a friendly negotiation regarding shared water access. I didn't reply yet because what Karen didn't understand was that this wasn't about fish. This was about respect, about boundaries, and about making sure people like her knew where the line was. And I owned the valve that drew that line. Literally. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with 6 missed calls from unknown numbers, all within an hour. By noon, my inbox was full of desperate messages from HOA board members, lawn maintenance contractors, and even the local landscaping company. Turns out, without my permission to access the underground spring, the HOA's entire irrigation system was failing. Front lawns across the community were turning crispy. The flowers Karen had personally ordered for the welcome gate were wilting into mulch. HOA members who prided themselves on picture-perfect landscaping were now facing brown patches, dead turf, and rising complaints from realtors who claimed the neighborhood was losing visual appeal. And I hadn't even touched the valve again. Just that 1/4 turn had shown them how vulnerable they were. I wasn't trying to play God. I just wanted them off my back. But Karen, she was doubling down. That evening, I spotted her pacing on the sidewalk near the edge of my fence line, her Bluetooth earpiece blinking furiously. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but her arm flailing gave me a pretty good idea. Then I got the certified letter. The HOA is formally requesting immediate restoration of historical water flow access or face legal action for disruption of essential utilities. Melissa laughed so hard she nearly spilled her tea. "They're threatening you with legal action on your water." I read the letter again, shook my head, and started writing my reply. It was short. To whom it may concern. Access to the spring requires a renewed usage agreement and lease. Terms are negotiable. If no agreement is reached by Friday at 5 p.m., the HOA will need to seek alternative water sources. Sincerely. Landowner. At 4:57 p.m. Friday, Karen herself showed up at the edge of my driveway with a man in a suit. He introduced himself as Mr. Halpern, HOA legal counsel. Polite, cautious, and clearly nervous. "We understand there's been some tension. I'd like to propose a revised agreement." Karen glared at him like she couldn't believe he was here to negotiate rather than bulldoze me into submission. I reviewed the new draft. It was better, but not good enough. "You want to restore access without rent?" I said. "This land isn't a charity. I'm willing to provide water, but I'm not doing it for free anymore. Not after the cops. Not after the accusations." Karen slammed her clipboard down on her hood. "This is extortion." "No," I said, calm as ever. "This is consequence." And then Melissa stepped out, holding something that made Karen's face go white, a water quality report. She laid the folder flat on the tailgate of my truck. Karen leaned in reluctantly. The attorney followed, peering over her shoulder. The top sheet was a certified lab report, complete with official state water quality seals. Melissa tapped the bold red section with a perfectly timed smirk. "We ran a test on the water flowing back into the HOA supply line. Heavy levels of calcium, rust, trace contaminants from old piping. Your side of the system hasn't been maintained in years. Karen's lips moved, but nothing came out. Mr. Halpern adjusted his tie. This could become a liability issue. Melissa nodded. That's putting it mildly. If someone gets sick or files a claim, it'll go public. And who do you think the HOA members will blame when they find out the water they've been using comes from land they don't even lease anymore? I leaned in. And remember, you called the cops over a few fish. Karen blinked rapidly. Her posture shrank a little. She'd built her power on intimidation, shame, fines, gossip, and bureaucracy. But for the first time, she realized she was on the losing side of both logic and law. Halpern broke the silence. What terms are you proposing? I didn't even look at Karen. 10-year lease, monthly payment based on consumption, and a signed letter of apology retracting the violation report she filed with the sheriff's department. Karen hissed, never. Melissa tilted the second report toward them. Page 3 notes a potential for mold contamination in the holding tanks. If pressure remains low another 3 days, she smiled sweetly, but we can hold firm if you prefer. Karen stood frozen. Then, quietly, she muttered, fine. It took 2 days to draft the final agreement. By Monday morning, the HOA had officially agreed to lease water from me at triple their previous arrangement. The apology letter came in later, signed and sealed, with not a single Karenism in sight. That evening, as I watched the tilapia jump in the pond and heard the distant hum of HOA sprinklers starting up again, Melissa walked over and handed me a glass of iced tea. You know, she said, when we moved here, I didn't expect a water war. I smirked. I didn't expect to win it by moving fish. She laughed. You think Karen learned her lesson? I sipped my tea and looked out across the fields. Probably not, but she knows where the pipe runs now. And that was enough. Because in a neighborhood where the HOA ruled with fines and fear, I'd reminded them of something they'd forgotten. Power doesn't always come from the boardroom. Sometimes it flows straight from your land. If you enjoyed watching HOA Karen get a taste of her own dry medicine, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, drop a like if you think property owners should know their rights, and let me know in the comments what you would have done if Karen came for your pond.